Hello and welcome to our World Ocean Day coverage here at Ripley's Aquarium of Canada. My name's Katie. I'm the manager of education and conservation here at the aquarium. And we're so thrilled to have you joining us here today for an amazing conversation. Today we're talking about playing with sharks, which tells the extraordinary life story of pioneering scuba diver Valerie Taylor, a glamorous shark hunter from the 1950s. She was a champion with deadly aim before a personal epiphany transformed her into a passionate marine conservationist, specifically for the ocean's scariest creature, the shark. Or are they the scariest? Long before anyone else, Valerie dared to get close, swimming against the tide of human perception of sharks and putting herself on the front line for over 70 years. Featuring a stranger-than-fiction script, a magnetic heroine, the making of Jaws, and that most charismatic and terrifying of screen creatures, sharks, this powerful and visually sumptuous feature documentary draws on the incredibly remastered film footage captured over 50 years. Through her life's arc, we go on a journey of new understandings, from fear to respect and admiration of these complex, majestic creatures. Valerie Taylor is a marine maverick, a fearless diver, and a pioneering conservationist who dared to befriend even the great white shark. This formidable woman forged her own adventure story in a male-dominated world. Valerie's passion to change the human perceptions of sharks transformed scientific knowledge and our understanding of these magnificent apex predators. Today, I am so pleased to be joined by the fabulous, fearless females behind the film Playing with Sharks, the Valerie Taylor Story, Valerie Taylor herself, director Sally Aitken, and producer Bettina Dalton. Welcome, and thank you so much for making time to talk with me on this World Ocean Day. Happy World Ocean Day to the three of you who are joining us all the way from Australia. Thank you so much. Such a pleasure to meet you virtually. So I got a chance to watch this film, and I was blown away by the amazing cinematography, the amazing images that you captured, both the historical footage that you were able to use, plus all of the new scenes that you shot. Why did you decide that this was the right time to make a film like this?
Good question.
Well, I feel like it was a little bit late in the game. You know, it was such a fabulous story that was there just waiting to be told. And I think I shocked myself to sit in a cinema watching the Jane Goodall film and being mesmerized by her story. And then I had my own epiphany, which was like, hold on a second. We've got this fabulous woman who inspired me as a child, inspired many generations of people, and we haven't told her story. So, and she had, Ron's collection of footage, her wonderful husband who shot the most extraordinary material, and it was waiting to be told. And I think it was really received well when I pitched it at Sundance, and it just felt like the right time. And I was fortunate that Sally was around and available, and Valerie just said, yes, what took you so long?
And speaking of timing, that we managed to travel prior to the world being shut down, so as you pointed out, there's contemporary footage as well as the historic footage. So, lucky timing on that front. And hopefully with the world starting to sort of open up again, we'll be in a new phase too.
And on that note, it's actually the timing for the film, I think, where it's landed and been available to the public is because we've all been through so much hardship through COVID and, a lot of isolation, a lot of challenges for people emotionally. I think people are really wanting to reconnect with the natural world in a whole new way. So the way that Valerie had that ability way before we had the awakening, that you could actually have a relationship, with a shark on an individual level, I think that's really resonated for people. We're kind of yearning for that feeling, connection, that healing and that connection. So, that's the other reason why I think the film is very much a film of now, and hopefully it's all part of a healing process that we're all going through is learning to care about our oceans and that we're connected, not disconnected.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like, people have found so much solace, I think, in nature in the past year as well. And so even on the days maybe when we can't get outside, we're finding it also through our screens, right? And marveling at the amazing nature. So a full confession, I am not a scuba diver. I'm probably an anomaly in the aquarium staff that I am not a scuba diver. So for those people like me who have not had an opportunity to dive with sharks, what would you say are sort of the big misconceptions? What might surprise us about the opportunity to be underwater with sharks?
Well, I would like to think that everybody who could would go underwater with all the marine animals. This documentary focuses on sharks, but there's a lot of other wonderful marine creatures who you can get to know. Oh, Harry, he was so sweet. I knew him for years and years and years, and we got along so well. People don't think that a shark or a moray eel thinks and works things out. They do. You can teach a shark a simple trick, food related, of course, in a day. In one dive, I taught a shark a simple trick. And they remember you. They remember you from year to year. So do fish. I have to say I use food to make friends, but you make friends with your dog with food as well, so it's not that different. I was lucky. I never realised all those years that I was the first or breaking ground. It wasn't until later in my life when other people started to remark, nobody else has done that. I realised that I had seen things and done things that you cannot do today because the marine world, like the world above water, has changed very much and, in my opinion, not for the better. It's a place that is overlooked. We reach for the moon, Mars, the stars. We should be looking underwater and going down deeper. I think the whole world would be surprised at what's down there.
I agree. There's so many amazing creatures that, you know, you just need to take the time kind of to explore them, to really appreciate the weird and wonderful things that live beneath the water. And I remember hearing a statistic years ago that we know more about outer space than we do about the deep ocean. And the ocean does so much for us. The least we could do is learn about all the amazing things that live there and do our best to look after them.
You're right, especially sharks. They have such a bad reputation they don't deserve. Of all the hundreds of species of shark, there's only 6 or 7 that could be potentially dangerous. And those 6 or 7 are generally coastal sharks, like the great white and the bull shark and the bronzy in Australia. But there is no reason to go into the water if you don't want to potentially put yourself in the environment of a shark. It's your decision. It doesn't come up on land. It doesn't chase you up the beach. You go into an alien environment that is the world of a different animal. It's a thinking animal. They all have different personalities. And you make that decision. The decision is yours. I made this decision many times all my life, mostly because my husband said, the sharks are here, jump in. And I'd do it. You know, I was a very obedient wife. And I had one other asset. I wasn't really afraid. I don't get afraid. I get angry. And I guess it's a form of fear to get angry. And in the early days of spearfishing, and I'd spear a fish and the sharks would come, I would go for them, chase them away, protect my fish. Very strange thing for a woman to do back then, but I didn't think it's strange. It's what I needed to do. I can see a picture of my beautiful
that's such
husband.
a lovely.
He's so lovely. Oh,
was that Blue Water White Death, that photograph?
yes, that's Blue Water White Death.
When
yes.
you were swimming with the oceanic white
That's
ships.
in 1969.
Yeah.
Yes.
Look, when you look at the equipment, you know, it was all so basic. There were not, you know, no buoyancy compensating devices. And, you know, back then you just forget that you were pioneering from the get-go.
Well, nothing.
Nothing. Yeah.
Nothing to tell us how deep we were, how much air we had. Nothing.
No.
We did it all in our brain while we were diving.
Yeah.
But with a pink ribbon. That's
Yeah.
my favorite part. You know?
Yeah.
Signature look. But in
Yeah.
all these things that you did, like, even though you said you weren't afraid, and maybe just something that didn't come up in the film, but it doesn't seem like, I mean, although the situations you were in seemed scary, nothing really bad ever happened to you that I could tell from the film anyway. So it goes back to that, like, that sharks they're not out to kill, to eat. They're not these mindless machines, right? They're just doing their thing.
They're not mindless machines, but like all animals, they're curious. And when we're thrashing around on the surface thinking we can swim, nature intends for a shark to come up and check out that it's not a wounded animal or a dying fish, and their job in the ocean is to clean it up of all this sort of thing, keep the species strong and fit. They don't have hands. They can't feel and say, I don't like that. They feel with their teeth. I've been bitten 4 times, only once badly. I've always stayed still and waited for the shark to let go, and it always has. I mean, it's quite alarming to look down and see a foot in a shark's mouth, but I know it's going to let go because it doesn't like my foot, doesn't like what's on my foot.
Yeah.
And it will let go, and it did, of course. Not that my husband cared. He didn't even bother filming that incident. I had to go and ask someone on the shore to do it and gave him the camera to do it with. Yes.
But like, that's a statistic that we share too, that like fewer than 10 people per year are fatally injured by sharks, whereas humans are responsible for the death of over 150 million sharks every single year. And probably those 10 people who are having negative encounters with sharks are because they're doing things that you're saying that we shouldn't be doing. We shouldn't be splashing around at the surface. The sharks are confused and they're just coming to find out what you are. And unfortunately for us, that means they have to do it with their mouth.
They don't have hands.
No.
The human race is very famous.
Actually, ironically, the shark incidents here in Australia, those people that have survived the shark attack have often become shark conservationists.
That's right.
Yes.
So there's an acceptance of, okay, I was in the water. There are people who don't turn around and say, let's have a war against sharks and let's kill them all. In fact, usually it's a political reaction. It's not a reaction from the people who actually, were bitten.
Have had that first encounter. Yeah.
So it's, it's a really interesting psychology. And sadly, it's the overfishing and the finning that is causing all the damage, and a lot of that's happening out of sight, out of mind. And, it makes you wonder during COVID when tourists weren't diving, when there's not so much diving being carried out in Indonesia and even where we were in Fiji, because in some way our presence in those remote areas helps keep the illegal fishing at bay because we're out there every day. So, I don't think we fully yet know. I mean, I understand there was some taking of sharks in the Galapagos, which is
a lot
during this period when, we're not on the water, with our presence. So people going diving or snorkeling and being on the water is not only a beautiful experience for them, it's also in some ways helping for the conservation of marine species because our presence of being there gives a real value beyond the philosophical value of these species being alive, but a value that governments say, wow, look at all the tourists coming here to see the fish. It's like this is a valuable asset.
Sure.
Yeah, one good friendly shark that hangs around is worth $1 million in tourism, just because the average diver wants to go down and visit a shark. Most of the time, people have to work their way up to the shark thing. A good way to start is with the sandbar tiger, or as we call it, the grey nurse. Totally harmless, never been an attack on a human. And I mean, one shark that is so ugly and people think it's a real killer, and it saddens me because I wrote a book called Great Shark Stories, and I went to the shark library and I could not find where a great hammerhead had ever bitten anybody in the history of the world. It doesn't bite people, and when you think about it, how can it? Its mouth is under that great big stupid head, and it just it sort of must feed groveling on the bottom. That's all I can think. I've met many, and they've always been very sweet and polite.
I was just thinking the work that you did to get the grey nurse protected here in Australia, which was the first shark in the world that had full protection, which is your sand tiger. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So now that's become such a popular diving experience for people.
Yes.
You know, that every weekend there are people diving with them, and you know, you think
they pay to go and see them.
And maybe 40 years ago, they may, if you hadn't have done that work and lobbied, they'd be gone.
How it happened, Ron and I were doing a television series, and one episode was called The Grey Nurse Shark. We went off to shoot the grey nurse shark. We ended up calling the episode The Vanishing Grey Nurse Shark. Mm-hmm. And that's when I went to work with the government. It took me quite a few months to convince people, thank you, television. That's all I can say. Get a good story, get good imagery, and they will put it on the news. And then you can speak to everybody in the country. And that helps a great deal. And that's pretty much how I work, trying to get everything protected.
Yeah, and we thank you for it, because that's our ambassador shark species that we talk about every day at our aquarium, is the sand tiger sharks that we have, and how they may look intimidating, but really they're not. They're super chill out, and they're a great way to teach people that like looks can be deceiving, and to sort of bridge that gap of they're not interested in people, and we let dive with your sharks normally too, and same, like it's they come out just glowing from this amazing opportunity to get up close to these like fantastic animals, right? Like just so magnificent and impressive when they're swimming.
And that's such a perfect design. I was going to say those teeth catching fish.
Yes. One of, I mean, you're speaking about the individual experience of divers or tourists today. And that was one of the most interesting things in putting together this film, is that we had the opportunity to go back through Valerie's own handwritten diaries, which she has kept since the 60s. And one of the things that was so amazing, just speaking about this period of time when Valerie and Ron had really observed that from the plenty of grey nurse sand tiger sharks that they had seen around the coast, and in particular in areas that were very familiar to them, Seal Rocks and Fish Rock, and then returning to those same places. And, it's distressing reading in the diary, we went down, we couldn't see any. And that was in a span of, I think, 10 years.
No, shorter than that.
Change.
It happened when they invented the powerhead.
Right.
And a powerhead, by the way, is a gun a bullet in a gun sort of thingy on the end of your spear. And you spear the shark, and the bullet comes out, a .303 or a shotgun cartridge, and kills the shark. And all these big hero men went down, and just a slaughter to go out to a grey nurse gutter, and we counted 22 power-headed sharks lying in the bottom. Nothing alive.
And that short amount of time in which such destruction can happen, and then it took a very significant amount of time through your personal advocacy to then have the shark protected in the early 80s. But I guess the thing that I observed through all of, reading the diaries and hearing the stories is that personal advocacy really can work. And so we all have the potential through our own witness to be able to make change, should we feel compelled to do so. So I know that a big focus, of course, is on habitat protection, and certainly it's not enough just to protect that species of shark, which it is protected. It is the habitat. That shark is a very slow breeding species and needs a protected area. So, it's not something that can be confined to just the coast of Australia or just the coast of Canada. You know, we require global effort in these sanctuary zones so that they can all be coordinated for the better health of the ocean.
Yeah. One of the big themes with World Ocean Day this year is the drop the S, that it's not oceans, that is one ocean. And we have named the different areas, but actually we're all connected. It's all one body of water, and same, like protecting the sharks is great, but they need whatever they eat to be protected. And, you know, like that whole food web and food chain is also so instrumental to healthy ocean ecosystems,
Yes.
Which sharks are such an important role as a top predator, but that everything else that falls underneath them also plays an important role as well.
Yeah, especially like in the polar regions with the krill and the productivity. If we lose the productivity in those regions, it's all interconnected, as you say.
And a web of life, as you say.
And the film, I think, does something really important, especially for young people who, and even myself, didn't realize just how productive the seas were. Like, I think it's really important to see, like, actually there was once this abundance and there were fish that were huge. And because there's a concept I'm sure your educators talk about called shifting baselines, where we only know the world, from within our lifetime in the way we see it. Whereas Valerie and Ron, through their film footage, have allowed us to see what once was, and to realize fully what we have lost and what we need to strive to reclaim.
Well, it will be reclaimed if we give nature the chance.
Mm-hmm.
But, we're a greedy mob, us humans, and unfortunately for the marine animals, they're free for the taking. Not like the farmer who has to clear the land and fertilize and plant. They just go and take. And nowadays, I have to say, sadly, in Australia, the fishermen are targeting the breeding aggregations. And to my mind, in another 10 years, that'll be that.
Mm-hmm.
We've got to have bigger, totally protected areas where marine animals can live, love, and breed in peace without humans coming in and targeting them for cat meat, shark fin soup, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I can't see it happening, but I try hard. I'm just one voice. There are many other voices, but they don't seem to understand. If they all got together and made a big, strong person, big, strong commitment, they could probably move governments. I move governments occasionally all by my little self, and it always surprises me.
I think you've got a big voice, Valerie. I think you're such an inspiration. And I mean, all three of you, I think, what an amazing representation of female leadership. And so I'm just wondering, like, what kind of advice would you give for young women who might be watching, whether they're interested in marine biology or scuba diving or documentary filmmaking? What kind of advice might you pass along to our younger viewers about how to make an impact?
If you're interested in doing it, do it. Don't say, oh, I've got to go to university and get a degree. I left school on my 15th birthday. I just went out and did everything I did. I had a mother who told me I could. She always said to her children, you can be anything you want. You just got to go out and be it. Well, that's what I did. I tried all sorts of things, a stage, star of a silver screen. I tried an artist. I did all these things. But what I really liked, and I got the most out of, was in the marine world. And not just sharks, all the animals. I made some really interesting friends over time, especially when we were working on a big television series and we were in the one place. You get to know every fish, every crab, every eel, every shark, every ray, and they get to know you, and you become accepted. That's the most interesting thing. If you behave in the right way in the marine environment, even by sharks, you can be accepted. And Most people don't give the sharks enough time to get to know you. That's the problem.
Mm-hmm.
I also think that girls, if you're talking specifically about young women, there's a high degree of diversity of women who live around the world who have a deep connection with the place they live. I'm thinking of marine biologists in Indonesia and in Papua New Guinea, and those people there are the custodians for the places in which they live, and also their voice is stronger and more powerful because their community respects them and they're part of that community. So I think throughout the world, to empower young women to either be educated or financed or in some way be empowered to work within their communities on conservation projects, because we need to respect that there needs to be a transition from traditional fishing or traditional ways that fish were harvested. We can't just say stop fishing. So there needs to be a deep understanding about what's going on in the local communities and how we can transition from one industry to another. And I think that grassroots level with young women and young men in those remote and isolated communities, they need to be empowered to come up with sustainable solutions, and they need to be financed to do that.
They need to be, look, nobody ever has given Ron and I 1 cent. We earned it. I think that's something that young people should understand. Go and earn it. Earn your place. Earn your money to survive. I won't say in the beginning how we earned it. Oh, yes, I will. We speared fish and sold them.
we gave up that secret.
But that was a long, long time ago. Then we discovered we could earn money around the camping areas up and down the coast, hiring a big tent and showing our movies and charging the campers money to come in. And that would pay for petrol, food, and camping fees. And that's how we started. It was nothing glamorous, nothing big, and it just grew.
Yeah, and then you got to make all the footage for Jaws. Like, there's no bigger movie about sharks than Jaws, right?
Well, yes, that was exciting in a way, I guess. But at the time, we just thought it was going to be another film, and didn't pay all that much attention, except how much work were we going to get on it. And I remember Richard Zanuck and David Brown sending us the galley proofs of a book called Jaws and asked us to read it and tell them what we thought. And of course, we thought it would make a great movie. We could see ourselves working in it. And that's exactly what happened. We were so fortunate to have been asked about that and to be involved in it. And Universal were grateful. Although we couldn't work in America, they took us to Martha's Vineyard so we could be there during the filming of the rest of the film with the non-real. That's a real great white shark.
Look at Ron there.
So close and so unfussed by the proximity.
And look at that. The shark obviously wasn't afraid because its eye is open. Normally, if they're afraid, they have that the nictating membrane that comes across.
Yeah.
Is that right? But
that's correct.
It's got a beautiful eye to eye there, Ron, and the great white.
The great white is the only shark in the world that will put its head above the water to investigate the unusual. And that's exactly what it's doing. It's prepared to defend itself, but its eye is open. And Ron is unusual. It's never seen a man with a camera. And it's having a look at him.
Yes, there's mutual curiosity in that shot to me.
And no one's flinching in that shot.
No.
There's an openness. It's beautiful.
It's
Ron's
amazing.
quite casual.
Yeah.
As he always is, no matter what. I'm drowning. Help, help. Just swim a little harder, Valerie. From the deck of the boat.
Oh, that's the famous shot that Ron took that graced all was that Blue Water White Death and all that. Was that the first underwater shot, I think, of a great white?
This is the first footage and stills of a great white shark underwater alive that had ever been published. And as Tina says, it became a very iconic image and then was used over and over again through those seminal films. But the extraordinary thing, as you see told in the movie, is how that shot was achieved, that calmness of the previous image with Ron and the camera.
Mhm.
Well, he leant over the duckboard on the back of the boat, and held his breath long enough to achieve the shots.
Actually,
and
it's one of the favorite scenes. He's got his foot tied up with a little
unbelievable. It's
piece of rope,
unbelievable.
So he doesn't fall off.
If you consider that not only had that kind of footage never been achieved before, but therefore consequently people had never put themselves in that situation before to do that filming. So clearly he didn't know what was going to happen, but he had faith and he had calm, cool demeanor, and it paid off, and it paid off in spades. And we have these beautiful images.
Actually, Ron was always one for calculated risk, wasn't he?
Yes,
he always calculated.
His favorite expression.
Yeah, and he always thought about it. So, he would have, like Valerie, looked at that shark and said, okay, it's not behaving in an aggressive way, and calculated and read that behavior instead of just having that instinctive, a shark, it's going to kill me. It's like reading the shark's behavior, each one, and the nuances, the way they're swimming, and are they arching their back, and and I think that's a really interesting part of Ron and Valerie's life, is that they spent so much time underwater. They
Observing.
were able to read the language of the sharks and get to know them.
Yeah, well, Ron, in that last shot, we didn't have a cage. That's why he was hanging off the back of the boat. After that, we had cages when we worked with great whites. We went down deep. This is me with a blue shark, open water off San Diego. And I'm testing the mesh suit. And if you wonder why I don't have the pants on, it's actually Ron's mesh suit, and it's very big on me, and the pants kept falling down.
No.
So, yes. And so I didn't wear the pants.
Didn't you ultimately get bitten on the ankle?
I wasn't wearing the mesh suit at that time.
Right.
No. And this is on Martha's Vineyard itself. And this is the mechanical shark, Bruce.
That's Bruce. They had
Valerie's
three of them.
checking out his teeth.
They weren't as big as they should have been, actually, because with the size of the shark, the teeth could have been bigger.
More like a megalodon size.
Yeah, that's a megalodon size.
Yeah.
Yes.
I found it so interesting in the film, when you were talking, when Steven Spielberg wanted the shark to be so much bigger than what they actually are, and so using recreating the boat and the cage and everything at a smaller scale to give that impression that the real shark footage was of a much bigger shark.
That was one of my favorite edited sequences in the film. The intercutting between the two. Really.
Well, you can see actually how much the movie did draw on that real life experience. It's an incredibly dramatic moment. And why wouldn't you then convert the script to reflect the reality? So interesting from a filmmaking perspective. We talk about hybrid films today, documentary blended with drama. And there was something of that back in the early 70s when they were shooting Jaws.
And smart of Steven Spielberg to shoot that first.
Very clever.
To retrofit the scene to the script.
Yes.
We had to get all the live white shark footage first.
And to use that footage very judiciously as well. One of the crafts in Jaws is that when you see the real shark, it's real, and that the rest is very suggestive. And I think that the power of the imagination, getting back to, your starting question, Katie, around perception, it was absolutely to the heart of that very thing, which is, we fear what we don't know. And it was staggering, I think, that, the disbelief that Ron and Valerie and the people who knew the great white shark, just the assumption that, it's entertainment. It's a fictitious story. It's a fictitious shark. They don't behave like that. Whereas for the majority of viewers, and it was such an enormous success, was partly because there just wasn't that knowledge. And we're in such a better place today because of work of people like Valerie and the aquariums around the world, and the and the gathering knowledge of of all the science over the decades to build a better picture. The trouble is we have to maintain what's there now because the science can't keep up with the degradation in the ocean.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I have a horrible feeling it won't. Countries like Australia, Canada, America, Great Britain. Very good.
Can't help ourselves with the puns.
We love puns.
You can talk to those people. But for Asia, marine conservation is a bad word, and they really don't believe in it. The ocean is there, free for the taking, take everything you can. That is the attitude I find. And unfortunately, some of the best marine environments in the world are actually in the Asian area of the Pacific and Indian Ocean.
The tropics, yeah.
The tropics. That's the mother of all life.
It's quite scary to think that, we are in some situations potentially on the verge of a collapse of a food pyramid, but we don't know it because it could happen very suddenly.
Yeah.
With the long breeding cycles of many of these species, when you think of fish like the orange roughy and 20 years, isn't it, before they reach sexual maturity, and so there's a lot of species that could be on their final stages of their sustainability of their species, but we just don't know it yet. And I find that terrifying, and especially for our children and our grandchildren.
Yes.
That we lived in a time when we were so rapacious with our oceans and we were just taking. And now our children and their children won't see what we've seen. So it compels us to really take action. And whether there's some young students in Queensland, which is one of our northern states, who've actually taken a mining company to court because they wanted to build a jetty out that was going to affect the whole Great Barrier Reef. And they took it upon themselves to take this company to court, and they won. And
yes. And it set a precedent.
It did.
Because the ruling was also, if I have the same scenario, that it was about the potential damage to the young people as well, that was the basis of the court case. And they were supported by an 86-year-old nun. So, your job's not done yet. Sorry.
So when you ask what can you do, I think of those 3 young people who said, this is our future. This is our health. This is the health of our backyard, our community, where we grew up. And one mining company wants to put this jetty and cause all this outfall and runoff and toxicity to go onto a World Heritage listed site. No, that's not going to happen. And they took it upon themselves. And, so I think it's that courage, the same courage that Valerie had to just dive in, pick up a camera, go places in a little tinny boat and drop over the edge in the middle of the ocean with no mobile phone, no GPS. And it's that courage I think we need to really confront the future that we all want.
And the capacity to change. And, I think one of the things that I find very inspiring in Valerie's story is your illustration of the capacity to change, and just thinking about your comments around the crisis in many of the marine parts of Asia. The capacity to change is upon all of us, and so I maintain some form of hope. It's about the awareness of what a lack of change might do. And so in Valerie's story, when she witnessed that there were species disappearing before her eyes, she acted and she transformed. And the capacity to realize that you've done wrong and that you might want to atone for that, that's okay too, and we have to be slightly bigger than ourselves here, because we aren't just talking about our lifetimes, we are talking about the lifetimes of our children and our children's children, and hopefully their children too. So at some level, I do hope that the world is capable of change. We just have to do it as quickly as we can and maintain what we have now.
Yes, but you keep saying we. And that, who is the we? there are many.
You and me, and Bettina,
But-
and
you.
Katie, and all of the people that are watching Katie's video.
But we do need to bring big multinational
Yes,
Yes,
organizations
yes.
along with us.
Yes.
And
That's right.
there has been a lot of pressure on big multinationals because of the sustainability factor, because a lot of companies rely on a stable climate, productivity on
Yes.
farms, all of these issues to do with the planet as a whole.
Mhm.
And they're starting to realize, hold on a second, if we continue to have drought and bushfire and flood, we're going to lose money. So the motivation is money, but always, but indirectly, we hope it will bring about positive change.
Yes.
So I think that anyone who has the capacity to be at a boardroom table, whoever they are, whether it's a child's mother or father, to be able to invoke that change at the boardroom level is also hugely important, because it has to be top down. We can only do so much, but we need a top down movement to realize that without the change from the top down, we won't move fast enough to save what we have.
I don't think we're going to move fast enough anyway, unless there's a huge change in the way the corporate world thinks. And at the moment, they only think of profit. They don't mind how they make that profit. And I can guarantee that, because I've had words with them. They must think I'm a bit of an idiot, little old lady going up there. Well, I wasn't so old, I was much younger, and arguing the point. But it can be done. And one thing, people say, oh, but sharks eat people, they attack people. You're more likely to get killed in your car driving to the beach than you're ever going to have when you're in the water at the beach. More people probably die in one day on the roads in Australia, I don't know about Canada, than would get bitten by a shark in 1 year, by far. So it's not as dangerous as you think. It's just the idea, I think, of being eaten alive. It's a primitive horror from a long time ago in our, the way
Deep
we
psyche.
think. Yeah.
I think I agree. I mean, so much of this is, we're all on the same page here. I think there's so much that we can all be doing, and whether it's writing to government officials and making sure that they know that we think that these things are important, and the choices that we're making in our own life and in the corporate world, and pushing them to be better too. I think it there's something that we can all be doing, and I think a film like this, I think, just reminds people of why it's important. You forget, I live in a big city. I don't see this. I work in an aquarium, so I get to see this stuff frequently, but most people don't. And especially where we live in Canada, people don't get to see sharks unless they go away on holiday somewhere and get to go diving, unless they come to an aquarium, right? So just reminding them through amazing footage that Valerie and Ron recorded, and you as well, Sally, that this is what's out there, and it's worth protecting for sure. So thank you so much for this lovely, inspiring conversation. I could talk to you all for hours, but being aware of the time, I think we'll leave it there. If people are interested in knowing more about the film, they can visit the website that we're going to share on the screen right now, and they can check there to see where they're able to screen it locally. And thank you so much for your time and being so generous with us on World Ocean Day. And thank you so much for all you're doing for sharks and the ocean.
Thank you, Katie.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for the opportunity.